I'm Tom Castelnuovo from the Brooklyn Society, and for the next 10 days, I am the AEU Treasurer, and then I am term limited off the board and off of my position. So that there'll be a new treasurer elected at that point. So I'd like to first go through a summary of the major changes in the what's this one? Wait on that.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, Joni. How are you? And Trang is here. Hi, Trang. How are you?
Hello.
Okay. All right. So I was just starting with an introduction, and all right. Let's wait again. All right. Let's slow it down here and wait for a couple more people to join us.
Well, I think Tom, you're going to find that there will be people joining us for the next 10 minutes or so. I recommend we let them catch up. We are recording.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Scotty. Good to almost see you here. All right. So let me share my screen and start off with a summary of the major changes for the FY23 budget. And if you have any questions at any time, feel free to chime in. And if I don't see your hand, Bart, please feel free to let me know, ask me a question. So, all right. Share this. Okay. Okay, and I hope people can see my screen. Is this true?
Yes.
Yes.
Make it a little less complicated in a second, and we can go ahead and reference the FY22 budget for comparison purposes. So first, a summary. Here are the main things. The economy was not kind to the AEU that last year because of COVID and related developments. So we had we're projecting a 10% reduction in apportionment revenue based on the FNS submissions. We decided that it's best that the AEU hire an interim executive director, and there is once Bart departs, Bart will continue on as executive director for the first quarter of the AEU fiscal year, which is from October 1st through December 31st. And then after that, we're going to have an interim executive director for 9 months. We've budgeted $90,000 for that purpose. And that extrapolates out to $120,000 for 12 months. And we can get a decent interim executive director for $120,000, according to Dwight Pinozo's analysis of that. We are continuing our popular and successful consulting leader program with funding at $19,000 for FY23. And when all is said and done, we're going to end up with a $5,000 FY23 deficit. But keep in mind that we had done multi-year funding for the consulting leader program for fiscal years 22, 23, and 24, because we had some surpluses due to federal PPP money, for COVID relief. And so we're going to use so $5,000 of the $5,000 deficit's being taken care of by that, and we're still going to have $8,000 left in FY24 to go ahead and spend on the consulting leader program, or whatever the new board decides to go ahead and spend the money on for FY24. Okay, so those are main points here, and let me go to the budget itself. Any initial questions about the budget? Going once, going twice. All right, so I'll dive in here. Let me focus down a little bit. All right, so for the FY23 proposed budget, we're expecting $190,000 in apportionment income from our hardworking societies, $45,000 from unrestricted individual donations, and that's basically the same amount that we're projecting for FY22. There's a very generous individual who every year makes a $10,000 restricted individual donation to the AEU, and she is expected to continue to do that for this fiscal year. And then we expect to take in $850 from marketing and merchandise for AEU pins and earrings and books and what have you. I got a pair of AEU earrings from my daughter a few years ago that she has yet to wear. Okay, any questions about these sources of income? No, okay. Programming, there are society payments that are made for the Visiting Leaders program, and we expect that that'll total about $1,500. The National Leaders Council pays dues of $1,500. Okay. For the assembly, assemblies historically have been break-even propositions, but in a virtual environment, we're assuming that we're not going to take in any money for an assembly for FY23, but that you'll see on the expense side, we're going to spend about $5,000 on an assembly. If it's decided that there'd be an in-person assembly, there could be different economics of that, but this budget funds $5,250 on the assembly in excess of the amount that would be taken in. There are guest conference individual payments expected of $8,500 that will balance out with $8,500 in expenses. Same thing for FEST, $500 in payments for that and $500 in FEST expenses. And then, so for programming, that comes up to a total of $12,000. Okay, continuing here, right now we still have about $700,000. Let me go down here in our board and leadership funds, in our Oppenheimer reserves. And our custom for the last several years has been to go ahead and allocate 4.5% of those funds in income, whether it be interest or dividends or capital gains, to go ahead and support the AEU. So the budget includes $31,950 in funding from those funds. All right. Then there's $64,000 coming in from the Adler Fund. The Adler Fund is managed and overseen by the trustees of the New York Society. And basically that provides funding for the dean, for the leader training program, and also for internships for leaders in training, as you'll see on the other side of the budget, and also provides a contribution for administrative and general costs. Also this year, okay, Laura's coming into the room too. All right, also for this year, we are asking the New York Society to go ahead and allocate $10,000 of the Adler Fund to be used for support of the consulting leader program. So we have a little bit of a reduction in leadership training, and we think that that $10,000 is consistent with the goals of the Adler Fund. So that request is being made. All right, so that's the Adler Fund. There's also $8,000 from the Mosler Fund for leadership training, and then there's another Mosler Fellowship Fund of $8,000 in income, and those are going to go ahead and support the consulting leader program as well. And then there's $3,000 coming in from the Rappaport Fund, which is sponsored by the Philadelphia Society. Thank you, Philadelphia Society. So all that leads us to have a total income of $372,891. Okay, and just incidentally, we reviewed this as to form with the Finance Committee, but the actual content of it was reviewed by the and passed by the AEU board a couple of meetings ago. All right, any questions on the income? That side.
Yes, Joni over here.
Hi, Joni.
Hi, I know this is a beginner's question, but it comes up. I know at every assembly you have a lot of people protesting their contribution per member that they have to give to the AEU. Do I see a line here for that in the income section? The
Sure. So that's the apportionment. Okay.
apportionment.
Yeah, and that's based on the FNS, the financial and statistical submissions provided by each society. That every year that comes up an estimate, and then we've got Hank Gessner in his rehab outfit here at the meeting. He's the person who's responsible for converting these FNS submissions to an apportionment estimate for the year. Now, also this year, there's been a proposal from Trang, from the Washington Society, to go ahead and have us take a look at using society budget information as opposed to income information as the basis for the apportionment. And the Finance Committee got together earlier this week to go ahead and discuss forming a task force to go and take a look at that proposal and other ideas related to apportionment. So I need to summarize what our group took a look at, but we will. I'll be reporting that back to the AEU board. I guess it'll be the next board to decide on the next steps in terms of empowering the task force to go ahead and look at at our apportionment formula. The recommendation of the Finance Committee is that we have folks from the Finance Committee, the board, and from societies be on the committee to go ahead and take a look at apportionment. So if people want to get into more depth on apportionments, they'll have that opportunity. So Joni, did that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Wait a minute. I just want clarification about what is suggested by the Washington Ethical Society to be used as a basis for the apportionment. Something to do with the society's income, did you say?
Well, actually, Trang, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you are here at tonight's Q&A. Do you want to say a couple words about that, or should I continue?
Well, this is Trang. Yeah, what I had brought to the board was the idea that, the last time the apportionment formula was discussed was many years ago. And so I thought it would behoove us to create, it was done through a task force working and presenting it at then an assembly and was voted upon. So, and it's been, I forget the number of years, what, 6, was it 6? Like, I can't remember how many years, but it's been many years. So what I was suggesting was that we don't need to necessarily reinvent the wheel. There are other ways that other congregations throughout, the U.S. Contribute to their affiliated organization, their national organizations or regional organizations in some cases. And so, and some of them do calculate it based on not on number of members, but on their budget, right? Which can have a better reflection in terms of the size of the organization. So that was just one suggestion. I wasn't going to say that was the final suggestion, but I wanted the task force to work on it. And so that's what the Finance Committee had talked about doing. And I apologize, I had sound issues just when you were talking about this, Tom, of course. So what is the Finance Committee going to be doing next in terms of working on this? And because one of the things I had asked in my proposal is that member societies have some involvement in this task force and in moving this and in reviewing how apportionments are calculated.
Right. So the people who were present at the Finance Committee on Monday that talked about your idea, and Hank was there, and Hank told us about apportionment discussions going back to, what was it, 1970s? I think Hank. And so we decided that, yeah, clearly this is an idea that warranted further study, and that we should have members of the Finance Committee, the AEU board, and individual societies present, on the task force. And so I need to go ahead and write up what it was that we discussed and then send that to the board. So I guess I'm going to be sending it to Sonia, but then Sonia's also term limited out in 10 days. And I guess she's going to forward it to the next president, whoever that might be, for future action by an AEU board. But yeah, definitely something worth looking at, and definitely something where we want to have the input of the finance committee.
And is this committee, is Joe Klein on this committee?
Well, let's see. Hank is certainly on the committee, and Joe was kind of undecided whether she wanted to be on the committee or not. But she did say she wanted to talk to you, Trang, about the proposal, given that you're both in the Washington Society.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if she's had a chance to go ahead and do that, but the finance committee is flexible in terms of who our reps are, and then the next finance committee will be chaired by the new treasurer who takes office in 10 days. So there might be some changes in finance committee membership too. But if folks want my 2 cents, I'm glad to go ahead and offer it on this topic. And Joe is certainly fluent on it. So
yeah,
I mean, we haven't totally nailed that part of it. We just know that it has to be a combination of finance, the board, and society.
The last time it was done, we had representatives from 12 societies of different sizes and different income levels, etc. And at least my vision would be that this would, that we should, if we're doing it, that we should do it with invite participation from a variety of societies. So representing, endowed societies, societies with buildings, small societies, etc. So that to get a cross section of views.
Mm-hmm.
I gather that Trang put out a proposal, which I would, if you could forward it to me, and I think if we're going to get interest in participation, we should let societies know. One, I think it's important to know how the current apportionment thing is, because I don't think it's been well understood, but it is based on number of members and society income, with the societies with the highest income per member having a limit as to the apportionment per member, but 3/4 of the money and the vast majority of the societies are based on a formula based on number of members and society income, roughly $30 per member plus 6.5% of income, subject to a cap that no society pays more than X dollars per member.
So Trang, one of the things we talked about in the finance committee was the value in having a supplement to the FNS survey this year, so that we have some data to take a look at in terms of the impact of the proposal. So if we had a sense of what the expense budget was for each society, we could then go ahead and do a calculation of what the apportionment would be based on that. And you, for example, would have a chance to see whether or not Wes would have a better or worse apportionment based on that calculation, right? So because I think we want to see if we can make this revenue neutral, and then so the question is whether societies without significant sources of income would be better off or worse off under a budget-based, estimate. But it's hard to decide on the impact without the data. So one thing that I was going to include in my memo to Sonia to pass to the next president. I've been told not to jinx the next president here. That in passing it to the next president, that you might want to wait until the data was collected on the budget impact before convening the committee. Because it's easier for people to have a concrete idea, on the impact before starting to get into discussions on the allocation. So and then if you have the budget piece, you can certainly take a look at different ways of looking at income and looking at the budget and coming up with possibly an updated apportionment piece of it. So
Yeah.
All right, so I think maybe that's enough on apportionment right now. How's that? Okay. So all right, so then I'm up to the expense side of the budget. Let's see. There used to be $6,000 spent on getting our fundraising amounts for general contributions because people got letters in the mail rather than email, so that got reduced to $1,000 for, I guess, people who are still not email friendly at this point. So we saved some money on that. On the programming side, we have that $19,000 for the consulting leader program, as we discussed, and that was the amount recommended by John Dakin, and John, welcome, and by Liz Collier and others for consulting leader for this year. For the visiting leaders program, previously that had been at a $6,000 level. We're bumping it up to $8,000 with an allowance for inflation to allow for visiting leaders to actually physically visit societies. Under COVID, visiting leaders have been visiting people, through Zoom. So we thought that might change within the coming year. Okay, there is the $30,000 for 3 leader in training interns that we discussed before. On the program staff side of things, that $78,000 represents salary and fringe for Jake Ritter, who's our communications coordinator, Randy Best, who's the dean of the leader training program, and then Trish Callan, who provides support for youth and for the educational program. There's still the administrative costs we talked about before, the $5,000 with a addition for inflation. 5% of when we did the budget, there was a 5% year-to-year inflation rate. Obviously, that's changed and gone up again. The $8,500 for yes, the $500 for FES, $3,000 for educational programming, $3,000 at Relaxin, $4,000 for new society development and related membership activities. And we're maintaining a $5,000 program reserve because you never know what you're going to have to spend money on in a given year. And this, the board thought it was prudent to go ahead and create a reserve for the board to use. Then there are administrative and general expenses related to the operation of the AEU office and the like. Administrative staff, this is an area where we're really achieving some significant savings. That this year we have an admin assistant, and we have $10,000 of bookkeeping support from the New York Society. If you compare admin costs for FY23, the $37,000 with the previous year, get over to that one. Yeah, admin staff was at $73,000 before. Okay, so with Bart's leadership, we think we can have a significant savings in the admin side. So if you compare the admin staff, the $37,000 versus the $78,000 for program staff, that's listed above. It looks like it's like a 70-30 program to admin allocation. And a few years ago, I think it was probably the case that the reverse was true. So one of the things we've been doing on the finance committee and at the board level for the past couple of years is trying to go ahead and reduce admin costs and increase program expenditures relative to that. Also with things like the consulting leader program. So whenever people contribute to the AEU, and everyone should contribute to the AEU, AEU.org, click on the donate button. You can rest assured that that money is going into helping individual societies and to helping programming, and really we cut administrative overhead to the bone. Let's see what we have here. Board travel, $5,000. We're thinking that board members from different parts of the country are going to want to go ahead and travel to have a board meeting, and the next board may very well decide to have a board meeting in someplace other than the New York area. Certainly an option available to the new board, and there's some money for that. Communication, there's $16,000. $15,000 of that is for a much needed redesign and update of the AEU website. So that was not spent this year, but we think it's important and should be added for next year. So that's that administrative total adds up to $93,866. All right, and then, like I said, we're talking about hiring an interim executive director, 3/4 of the year, $90,000. The annualized value of that is $120,000. Bart thankfully continues as our executive director full time from October through the end of December. And then there are contributions that we make to other organizations. There's $3,500 to Humanists International, and there's $1,000 to the Secular Coalition of America that lobbies on behalf of things like separation of church and state. So you add up all these, the expenses add up to $377,784. There's a little bit of a deficit of about $5,000. We had our surplus carry forward with that PPP money I mentioned before, and that means we still have a reserve of $8,000 available for FY24. I've been talking too much. Do people have questions, comments, concerns on the expense side of things? Art, are you seeing any hands? No, okay. All right, well, that's the proposed FY23 budget, so.
Hey, oh,
Okay, so we have a hand here.
Hit it, Laura.
Hi, Laura, and you're still connecting to the.
No, she's got audio separate at the bottom.
Oh, all right.
you know, Laura has, her question is in the chat. If you could read from the chat.
Sure. Let's go see what we have here. Like here with the plan going forward for the ED and how that affects the budget for next year. So the plan is that, at least financially, is that we're going to go ahead and pay Bart's salary full time, 35 hours a week for October 1st through December 31st. Then after that, there'll be an interim executive director, and the FY23 funding for that is $90,000. The annual value of that is $120,000, and the expectation from Dwight Pinozzo from the Bergen Society, who took a look at interim director funding for the EU board, is that we can get an interim director for $120,000 a year. So, I mean, prices vary. You can get one for more than that, and I guess it's a question of finding the specifically qualified individual, and that's something I'm sure the board and the society president, retreat we'll be talking about this year. But that's the strategy with regard to the interim director. So did that answer your question, or did you want to ask something more substantive about what they're actually going to do or something? If I go back to the chat, we're talking full-time. Yeah, the interim director would be full-time. That's the idea. That's my understanding. And Bart, or anyone, if you have a different understanding, let me know. John Bacon, maybe you've gotten involved in that too. I don't recall.
Laura, did that answer your question?
So the annual salary would be prorated. So we're talking about a 1099 consulting person as opposed to a W-2 person with bridge benefits. So the $90,000 is the consulting allocation.
Well, it's for 9 months because the fiscal year ends September 30.
Right. Okay. That was it. All right. Okay, good. Yeah. And for the first quarter of the year, parts there. Okay. So Laura, your hand is still up. Is that?
Oh, sorry.
Oh no. Okay, you're back.
I can hear you too.
All right. How about that? Okay, great. All right. Any other questions? Carolyn Parker from the Austin Society.
Just a point of information, not that I have, because I don't quite know what the planning process is or what these decisions are in regard specifically to the executive director, but my understanding of how it might be done is that you might want to hire your interim earlier and have an overlap so that there can be some transition and training and handoff of information. Does the current board envision that as a possibility, or is there some hard and fast notion that there not be overlap between the current executive director and an interim?
Yeah. There was a brief discussion about that at a board meeting, but people thought that it was still pretty early in the process, and we're also waiting for the results of the society president retreats, the virtual one and the in-person one for that. But from a budget perspective, I'd point out that you still have to have someone making sure that the AEU functions. And under this budget, the way it's laid out, you've got Bart there for 3 months, and you have the interim person there for the entire period. And you certainly have continuing support, say from Jake and from the admin assistant, right, and others. But when it comes to executive director support, you probably want to be thoughtful about providing continuing administrative support. Bart, did you want to speak to that at all? Or?
Well, I think the main thing is, my understanding is the board didn't want to handcuff the new board, and so they wanted to try to make it possible to move forward without having to do a whole search first. So that's the interim executive. It could be probably a simpler position to fill, but then the other aspects that go along with that were left reasonably flexible. So my promise is to stay up until the end of December, but I don't know that means that there won't be some overlap, or that there might be some adjustment of my time before then, or I don't know. We have to play it as it goes, I guess, is the main thing.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a buzz in the background. Laura, I'm wondering if that might be you. Just a thought.
Is that better?
Okay.
Shut my phone off, and then I don't hear you.
Okay, no, we're good now. Okay, maybe that would work. So. Okay, other questions regarding the budget? Okay, all right. Well, this is my fourth and final AEU budget. It's been a pleasure to serve as treasurer. I've got 10 more days in the position. If anybody has any other questions, that there are things we still need to do in the finance committee related to possibly changing our our broker to be more in line with our SRI ESG goals, while also having better diversified portfolios. There's some catch up that has to occur on the audits, and I already have volunteered, to possible members of the next board to assist with that process, and be glad to be of help in whatever way I can going forward. I also point out that my wife and I hosted 4 AEU retreats at our place in Southhold at a savings to the AEU of $12,000 collectively for that. So, so there's another contribution, and hopefully we'll also be continuing to have our societies with buildings meetings, which are now quarterly. I think that they were very helpful during COVID, but I think that quarterly is probably the right frequency for that. And so I think we have one scheduled for so tomorrow. I think it's our next quarterly societies with buildings meeting. If folks want to go and attend.
And Tom, there is a question in the chat about, will the budget be sent to societies? People should know that if you go to the AEU.org homepage, right in the top in the center is a link to this to the Assembly, and in that link, on that first link, you can also see that there's a link to the delegates page, and on the delegates page are all the reports and documents that are applicable to delegates. So that will include the candidate bios and the reports from various committees, the reports from societies, the budgets, etc. So please help yourself. AEU.org. That will be your first key.
And you can also go ahead and contribute to the AEU through AEU.org.
While you're there, why not?
Why not? Sure, go do it that way. But the main message I want to get across from this is that, whatever perception there was that money went to the AEU for administrative purposes, to the extent that any of that was true a few years ago, it absolutely is not true at this point. This is a program-centered budget with money for leaders, for consulting leaders, for program support, and administrative support is kept to an absolute, bare minimum. So, so we focused on that. We also are saving money and doing audits by doing them ourselves, the way that other organizations of our size do. So doing it that way, we reduced the cost of fundraising from $6,000 down to $1,000. Cut down on retreat costs. We've really been focusing on trying to get savings, because that's ultimately how people get the best value from their apportioned dollar. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. All right. It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much.
And thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Bart.
Thanks everybody for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, Tom, I had a quick question for you.
Oh, sure.
For the consulting leader programs, is there a hiatus, or is there continued funding through July and et cetera?
John Dakin, are you on the call?
Actually, John recommended that I talk to the board. So,
okay.
Okay, never
number
mind.
that came from the leadership task force working on consulting leaders. So that's a good question for them.
Okay, I'll go back to Liz, and she'll let me know.
Great.
Thank you.
Right.
And thanks everybody for coming out.